Okay, so I'm pretty sure we are recording. That was a bit of a process. This was a first time for both of us. Came kind of maybe, well, not really. No, it's not the first time for you, is it?
Technology hard. No, it's not my first time. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
right. That for me, it's not, I'm not used to setting up cameras like this, but it was a good kind of like walkthrough. And so,
Absolutely.
uh, welcome to the first episode of Midnite Snacks. It is our second attempt at a podcast. First attempt at a video podcast because we figure that's what everybody else is doing right now.
It's the new garage band, apparently. So here we are. Two-man band.
And I'm not a big fan of being on camera, and we talked a lot about this going into it, that we kind of were just going to play this by ear and
Yep.
not be sticklers for perfectionism, because I feel like I used to be that person, and then nowadays, they say the whole thing, perfectionism is the thief of good,
The killer of creativity.
the killer of creativity. And so, we started talking about this podcast, this version of it at least, about a month and a half ago.
Yep.
You serendipitously messaged me with like this funny anecdote that your partner had mentioned to you.
I
And
have
what
to give
was
him
it?
credit. I have to give him credit. He said, what are you doing with your life? You should start a podcast with AP. And, it hurt, but he was not wrong. So from that little grain of truth and pain, here we are.
Yeah. And when you texted me about it, it just so happened that my mind had already started thinking that we should explore this again. And I think it's because over the last few months, we've been exchanging a lot of text messages and like just real deep dives on, even though we've always done that, that's what we've always done. But I just feel like in the last 5-6 months, we've just been doing it a lot more. And I always love
Why keep
hearing,
it to ourselves, right? Why not bring it to the masses?
I guess so. Yeah. We're going to be the only listeners of like this first podcast. I mean, maybe, but there may be some people out there, and
I am not
hopefully
above
they.
paying people to listen. So
Oh, that's true. And I mean, I'm sure some people I know will probably want to listen too.
yeah.
So this podcast, I think we wanted to really uh kind of just talk about like stuff we've always loved since,
Yep.
movies, film, TV. I think it's an open forum, kind of just sticking to the stuff we love in entertainment. Uh
I think
and
we have a lot of opinions. So
a lot
I think
a lot of
that
opinions. And you and I, let's give a little bit of background
sure.
on our friendship. I don't have the
How far do
exact
you want to go?
number. Yeah, I don't have the exact number. I don't have the
Yeah.
exact number. I don't know how many years it's been, but you and I have known each other, I believe, since sixth grade
Yep.
in middle school.
Yep.
And it was an art class because, of course, two gay guys would meet in art class.
It was, if I remember correctly, interior design and architecture.
Oh,
So
so that was seventh grade. So okay, that I
okay.
remember pretty vividly that was 7, because at the end
Okay.
of the year in sixth grade, she was like, our next year is gonna be a class with focus on architecture and interior design. And of course, my little trading spaces loving self and everything, Christopher Lowell and all that, I was really looking forward to it. And then you and I met there, and yeah, we've clicked ever since. And then we went into high school together, and our paths just continued to entangle themselves together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and through different phases of our lives in different cities throughout different experiences. So we've been together, I think, for the long haul. So
Mhm.
um more to the earlier point, right? Like, let's bring our magic to others.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to see what ends up. I feel like this is almost like a little bit of a therapy session. Like there's gonna
Fair.
be
Fair.
it's good. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit of a therapy session, and there's
Yep.
gonna be moments where I have my own kind of like aha. And I know that you and I, on certain topics, we align pretty well, but then on other topics, we don't at all. And I think I've always said to people, one of the things I love is talking to someone and not necessarily agreeing with them, because
Right.
I like to hear another perspective. Even though when I was younger, I, just was really kind of,
My way or the
like,
highway. Yeah.
right, my way or the highway. And I took it very personally when
Yep.
someone kind of like criticized something that I liked.
Yep.
Where in this stage, like, I'm already like a middle-aged, well, early middle-aged. I
No
mean,
numbers. No numbers, ladies.
no numbers, too soon for numbers.
Mhm.
That's fair. And so when we were trying to come up with a topic for this first episode, we figured let's maybe stick to a structure of a movie that we can both watch, and then pick a theme around that movie and kind of just go from there. And we
Yep.
zeroed in on Beetlejuice 2.
I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, Beetlejuice 2. And I had my fears going into Beetlejuice 2 ever since that first trailer dropped. Uh,
Yep.
but before we jump into talking about Beetlejuice 2, I
Yep.
think we need to address what Beetlejuice 2 is. Because Beetlejuice 2 is this kind of like more recent trend of legacy sequels, which, there's a lot to be said about why nostalgia is hitting so hard in Hollywood right now, and the ways that it's hitting and the ways that it's missing. There's quite a few legacy sequels that come out and they miss the mark completely, or rather
Yep.
they misunderstood the assignment
Yep.
about what people want from a legacy sequel. And so what is let's explain maybe what a legacy sequel is. And I'm going to use my good friend OpenAI, ChatGPT, to give us a very nice, quick summary of a legacy sequel.
Sure.
Legacy sequels, also known as requel or soft reboot, are films that continue the story of an earlier movie after a significant gap of time, often bringing back original characters while introducing it to a new generation.
Yeah.
Several examples of legacy sequels in the past decade are Top Gun Maverick, Jurassic World, Halloween 2018, which has a unique distinction in the fact that Halloween 2018 ignores every sequel for Halloween, and there's like
We're
9
just
of them.
making it up as we go along. Uh-huh.
Right. It takes place immediately after the first Halloween.
Yep.
So essentially Halloween, the original from the 70s, is like a prequel to
Right.
the new Halloween trilogy.
Yep.
Star Wars The Force Awakens is a legacy sequel. Blade Runner 2049.
Yep.
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yep.
The movie Creed from the Rocky franchise.
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road, which I feel like that actually does not belong there.
Okay.
I feel like Mad Max Fury Road does not belong there because I think, and you tell me what you think on this, I think a legacy sequel needs to have actors from the original film.
Yeah. I put a little more fast and loose with that. I would consider it a legacy sequel, but I think that's a very unique property already, and I think that the way the original ended, right? Like I think they did it justice with how that ended.
Yeah, I mean, I love Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
I probably would refer to it more as a soft reboot
Yeah.
of the Mad Max franchise.
Yeah.
But that makes it a unique kind of part
Yeah.
of the conversation.
Yeah.
Then there's the Matrix Resurrections, which I personally love.
I haven't seen them, so
It is
a
very divisive movie.
Yeah.
I personally love it. As we continue to do this podcast more, I think people will get to understand that I like big swings. I like when things don't necessarily play everything very safe, or rather, they break something to then put it back together. And I feel like Matrix Resurrections falls into that category.
Yeah.
And then there's the last one on this list is Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah.
Which does the same thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, I think the big takeaway from this list, right, is, if we're still defining what they are, is that they are films that follow very, very beloved films, right? Like
Right.
all of the films that these movies are based off of have an otherworldly kind of following, right? The Jurassic World trilogies and stuff
Right.
like that. And so rather than dismantling what's already built, it kind of builds on what's already there and expands the world. And I think that's why I love them, because sometimes I just want to revisit those worlds. Whether they do it justice or not, the pendulum will swing in either direction. But
Right. And some people, and some diehard fans will love some of this stuff, and then
yeah,
some diehard fans will hate it. And that's what's really tricky about when you play with these legacy franchises, these huge cult
yeah,
following franchises, that you can't please everybody.
right.
And a lot of times they're either trying to please everyone or they're trying to please just one specific part of the fan base.
Yeah.
It gets really murky. For
Well, I
example,
don't
tournament.
know. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, bringing it back to our original topic of Beetlejuice, I think what they tried to do here was none of those things, right? I think they got the director from the original, and I think they got the actor who played him, and I think they tried to bridge young Hollywood with Jenna Ortega with an established
Mhm.
kind of storyline. And I think that's the magic sauce, right? I think that's what, aside from the writing, right, and the tonal feel of the film, I think why this movie was so successful and I think ticked a lot of boxes for old fans and new fans is that it was a happy medium between, moving the story forward and seeing where Lydia is in her life and, the Dietzes, but also now we have Jenna Ortega, right? And now we have
Mhm.
more to develop there. And I think when it builds on what's already there, that's when they, for me, are very, very welcomed legacy sequels.
And to your point of bridging the young Hollywood and the legacy characters of the previous cast, that's exactly what they did in the Scream franchise. Essentially, like they
Right.
use, and I was all on board on that. We'll eventually get into the Scream discussion at some point.
Yep.
I think that was a very Your Miles May Vary to some degree, although for the most part, I think they were handled really well.
Yeah.
Um,
Until they stopped paying Nev Campbell, and then
right, and then they got into an argument with the other two.
Yeah.
So we talked about legacy sequels. I say let's just jump right into Beetlejuice 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been about a month for me.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna lie, I was struggling a little last night to try to remember
Fair.
something really good to talk about, I guess. But
Okay. Well, I have notes, so I can.
I had a feeling you would. I had a feel. I've been sick for a few days, so I don't have notes. I have like really bad notes on my. No notes for Beetlejuice 2, just notes for what we may talk about today.
Well,
But
and just to
let's
show
hear
my
your-
age, my notes are on actually a piece of paper, so not even
I-
like my phone.
So I use this exclusively for notes for work. And someone was like, wait, you use such a nice notebook for notes for work. But I mean, I think it makes me take it more serious.
Fair. Yep.
You know what I mean? Okay, so perfect then. That's good. You start with what you thought about Beetlejuice 2.
I've got 4 major points that I want to hit on very quickly.
Hit me.
The first 2 things that I loved are not major, but they made me very happy was Donna Summer's MacArthur Park being the song of the film. The way they did it, the guitar acoustic version of it, that scene in the chapel, like that was just all perfection. When I first heard it, I guess I'm so used to Donna Summer. When I first heard it, I didn't realize what song it was. And then like the cake and the rain and the whole bit. Oh my God. I love that. The second thing is kind of minor, but was a big, it's the image that's stuck in my brain was when Lydia's dad dies, they put a mourning shroud over the entire house.
Yep.
I mean, that was beautiful.
those are those little details, those little kind of like campy details of like the rules of the world, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
what is normal in this
Yes.
world that like just make you
Appreciate the
fall in love.
characters because that's really, the mom. That the mom is the one who
And
would do.
that's a very kind of like simple way to teach you the characters, to get you to understand the characters' headspaces really quickly in a really visual way. Like
Yeah.
the fact that that's what and I'm blanking on Catherine O'Hara's name in the movie.
Ilya.
Delia. Yeah, Delia. Um and I feel awful because I love the Beetlejuice movies,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I love that too. So what are you saying? Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved it.
You
I
loved it.
mean, I love the whole movie, but just going back to your point, right? Like that image is what I walked away from the movie. Not Michael Keaton, who was perfection, not Jenna Ortega, who was perfection, not Winona, who was perfection, but that image for me kind of crystallized the whole movie. And then my last 2 points, right, are just how brilliant was Winona Ryder and how much
Mhm.
we liked her, right, in this role. Catherine O'Hara can do no wrong. Really, her death by embarrassment with the snakes. I mean, it just
That's
sheer
right. That's
yeah.
right. I was upset that she died. I was upset, but I think
There was
given
no
that
role for her really. She's not the mom anymore, and she loved her husband so much that really, like for me,
it's
it
true.
felt right. And if there is a Beetlejuice, then it'll be just Winona and Jenna, and that kind of makes sense to me.
And I mean, look, I'll say this. I think story-wise, it made total sense to the character.
Yeah,
I just love Catherine O'Hara in the role. So like immediately my mind's like, wait, does this mean I won't get to see her in this role again? And like she's such a big part of both movies that kind of stings,
yeah.
but you really never know with some of these films. All right, so I'm thinking
Well,
I
it's
have
a
it.
movie about death, right? So at some point, they're probably going to go back to the other world and she'll be hanging around. Maybe she'll be somebody's secretary. So I don't think we've seen the last of Delia Dietz.
True. All right, so I'm thinking you'll say you're like, so do you have any negative thoughts?
Yes, one. It's my last point. Go
Go
ahead.
for it. No,
Well,
no,
I
go
was
for
just
it. Go
gonna
for
say,
it.
and we've talked about this before, and it's not really a negative, but it's really not necessary. Um, Monica Bellucci, right? Like gorgeous, beautiful, Mrs. Tim Burton. I get all that. It's ticking a lot of boxes, but as the villain of the film, I thought she was just a little bit unnecessary. With respect, I love her. She's beautiful. She's 60 years old, and I wish I could look like
Is
that when
she?
I'm 60. Yeah, or
I
she's
mean,
thereabouts.
I mean, she was in the Matrix Revolutions way back in like 2003,
Yeah,
which
she's
is
great. I love her. I mean, I've loved her since not Interview with the Vampire, Bram Stoker's Dracula, but she just was a little bit of a miss for me.
yeah. So I would say the character is definitely a miss. The character is definitely a miss, but
Yep.
that scene where she puts herself back together is fantastic.
Yep.
And I think I went to go see this and I walked away from it liking how kind of useless her plot was. You know what I mean? Like I almost found it intentional
Yeah.
that it's like setting up that she's this big villain, but in actuality, it was like this big nothing burger.
Yeah.
Um,
She
and
was a MacGuffin. She was just
yeah,
something to make
the plot happen.
Beetlejuice scared of something. And the funny jokes about the ex-wife, like I get it, right? But was it necessary? I don't know.
So I think that'll jump me into talking about what I kind of initially thought about it.
Sure.
I walked into it very apprehensive. I walked into Beetlejuice very apprehensive, and it's because I don't trust Hollywood to make stuff in this modern age that kind of is I guess the easiest way to say it is that it's of quality.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna make something as a cash grab, and when you don't really care about when you're mostly just looking to make money off of property, you don't really care
Yep.
how it's thrown out.
Yep.
And I also wanted to go into it with an open mind because
Yep.
I really liked the second trailer. The first trailer I did not like. The first
Yep.
trailer worried me quite a bit.
Yep.
It did the whole thing with the gloomy, like kind of operatic version of a famous song from the
Yep.
original, and I wasn't ready to commit to it after that first trailer. But the second trailer I thought looked really good, so I walked into it with an open mind, and I walked out really, really happy.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. I think it nailed exactly what I think legacy sequels want to do correctly, where it's bringing back the old cast members in a significant way, where it's not talking down to them,
Yep.
and they're not having the original kind of cast members just redoing the same things over again, but at the
Yep.
same time moving their character forward.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of times maybe that's where some of these movies kind of hit like a wall. They hit like a wall because they're so in service of moving new characters forward that they don't really care about what they do with the old ones.
Yeah.
And the old ones, and look, the movie that did this, Jurassic Park Dominion.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my God, that's right. We talked about this. We have to do an episode about Jurassic Park Dominion. To give like a small preview of whatever that's going to be like the day we talk about it. I'm obsessed with Jurassic Park, all the movies.
Yes.
Love the books, love the Jurassic World movies, even the divisive Fallen Kingdom, which I know, me being a fan of divisive movies is going to be a trend.
Yep, a theme. Yep.
I
mean, Jurassic Park is pinnacle cinema, right? That first film and that first trilogy. I mean, I didn't really care for the last one, but I mean, we're talking peak perfection there.
Yeah. And I was already going to segue into talking about Jurassic Park, so I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I'll stick to Beetlejuice too.
Well, and to your earlier point, right? And I think what bridges the gap between these two movies too, and I know we've talked about this before, is the lack of overuse of CGI, right? I think we are at a point in movie making where we just are taking so many shortcuts with like CGI-ness and perfection, high definition. And this didn't do a lot of that, right? Like you could watch, and you can watch the first Beetlejuice and you can watch the second one, and they seem almost from the same time frame, right? Like there's still that claymation kind of stuff with the worm, the real sets, like it just from a visual tonal point of view, it just
well. Those were really smart choices from Tim Burton. You know what I mean? And I walked out of that, and I think I texted you this. I go, that's the best Tim Burton has been in maybe over a decade. Yeah, maybe 2 decades. I don't think I would go as far as saying, and this is a hot take, Tim Burton has not made a film to the quality of Beetlejuice 2 since Sleepy Hollow.
I would agree. I can't think of anything between that and this. I mean, well, I guess Willy Wonka, but that was terrible.
I'm not a fan of that, no.
Yeah. I can't think of anything that he has put his name on that is of quality. But yeah, so I would agree.
But those choices, keeping it with the claymation, keeping the sets like very over the top sets, making it feel very tactile.
Yeah.
Where you could tell that the whole movie was filmed on location as opposed to being on like a green screen. And, my favorite company in the world, Disney, loves to put everything on a green screen. And speaking of, Tim Burton did the Dumbo remake, and that whole movie looks just like one big screensaver. Like, but I really enjoyed it. I love Jenna Ortega's character. I thought she did really, I mean, she was essentially playing like a variant of Wednesday, maybe like a more, or maybe that's just her gig. Maybe her gig is that kind of girl, you know what I mean? Where her vibe can, transpose itself from Wednesday to someone like Astrid. I love that I remembered her name because I was totally blanking.
Yeah.
I feel like, she's kind of like the go-to kind of like hot goth girl.
She's the new Winona. I mean,
Yeah.
she is, right? She is the
Yeah.
new Christina Ricci and
Yep.
Winona
Yep.
smashed into one, and we have Jenna Ortega. I didn't get Wednesday from her Astrid, to be honest. What I appreciate about her is that there's like little subtle things in her performances that differentiate. She's so like, you know, the Wednesday character is just so strong and she didn't feel strong in Beetlejuice, right? And then she got duped by this like guitar playing kid in the attic, and like those are things that I think differentiate her from the Wednesday character. Also, I didn't see that curveball with the kid tricking her.
I really liked that subplot.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
That came out of nowhere, and it was actually a nice deviation from things having to always deal with just the adults in the
Yeah,
house. You know, like the
yeah,
first one was basically just that, but having her explore the town a little bit more, again, more on location shooting,
yeah,
like having, I love when movies like set the place where like you feel like you get a real understanding of the place that the characters are inhabiting. Too many movies nowadays do not care to do that,
yeah.
which is one of the reasons that I really enjoyed the fact that Tim Burton made a point of doing that. Michael
And, and
Keaton,
and well, that kid was the villain, right? If we're talking about
right,
like
right, the true
antagonists,
villain. Yeah,
right?
he was the
The
true
true
villain.
villain is the kid in that. And honestly, like I would have been dead too, girl, because he was a cutie patootie.
He was. I mean, look, we all would have just said yes to
We
like
all make decisions.
a cute boy in a tree. Michael Keaton, I thought he was great. I think they very smartly kept his screen time roughly the same as
You know, that's
the
what they
first
say.
film.
That's what I've read. He felt like he was a lot more in this movie.
Yeah, did he?
I mean, the scenes of him being the boss
Yeah.
with Bob, um, you know, and the numbers are the numbers, right? I'm not refuting the fact that his screen time was roughly the same, but uh, I guess his presence, right, and the storyline was less about, I forget what those, Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, right, where they had most of the screen time in the first one. I feel like, or maybe we were just in the netherworld more, but he felt like he was in this movie a lot more than he was in the first one.
Well, let's see what the internet says. Beetlejuice 2, Michael Keaton's character continues to have a limited amount of screen time, similar to the first film, which was about 17 minutes. It does not go into detail if part 2 had more or not, but
Well, speaking of part one, I've got some fun facts for you.
go for it.
Did you know that my favorite and yours, Angelica Houston, was supposed to be the mom in the first one?
No, I love that though.
Yeah. So Angelica Houston was cast and was ready to shoot Delia Deets, and due to illness, aka whatever that means, she had to drop out, and they got Catherine. Also, fun fact I learned, Michael Keaton was not the first choice. Actually, Tim Burton met Michael Keaton auditioning for this role. They wanted, are you sitting down? Sammy Davis Jr.
What?
to be, and the second runner up to that, and this speaks to the time, was Dudley Moore from like.
Isn't that, yeah, that's who I thought of when you said it, Dudley Moore.
And the last little fun fact that I heard today, do you know who was neck and neck with Winona to be Lydia Dietz?
No.
Alyssa Milano. Can you imagine what that would have been like? Like,
no, I really cannot.
Lydia Dietz as cheerleader. No,
I really can't imagine that. And it's funny because like you mentioning Dudley Moore as Beetlejuice, my mind immediately goes to, that's essentially like if Gene Wilder was playing. It's like if Gene Wilder or Martin Short was playing Beetlejuice.
Yeah. They would have been more funny, but they would have been less caustic. And I think what Michael Keaton brought to the role was this really not raunchy, well, maybe raunchy is the right word, but this very adult demon that I think played well against her.
He's very like grubby. Like there's like a grimy kind of slimy
lounge lizard kind of
like kind of gross. See, I think look, we had mentioned this. or I had mentioned this to you, that I think, you know, and I think in today's world, if you tried to make Beetlejuice 1 again, it would probably be torn apart because Lydia was underage and Beetlejuice is not, and he wanted to make her, and like, they would say the movie is,
Yeah.
courting underage kind of relations and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I, yeah, and I think that definitely fits like the way that Michael Keaton was playing the character.
Yeah.
I thought the way that they kept the father in the movie was clever,
With a
considering
shark, with a shark fight. That was
considering
great.
everything. A lesser director and a lesser film would have just written him off and not bothered to do any of that.
Yeah.
So the fact
Do
that
we know why he didn't come back, or is he deceased? The actor?
do you not know the reason why he's not back?
I don't.
Michael McKean's his name, right? Michael McKean. So
I think
Michael
so.
McKean was arrested a very long time ago for child pornography.
Oh, okay. That's your fun
Yeah.
fact. Well, less fun, but more fact. Wow.
Right. Yeah. So it's again, they were up against the wall with that, and a lesser movie would have just, he passed away, end of it,
Yeah.
or where he's not around or something like that. They chose instead to kind of keep the character in the film and have his presence be relevant throughout the movie and have that be a driving force for Delia. And I thought that was clever. It's a really
It was
smart.
clever. It was clever. It was a fun, again, plot device, because really
Mhm.
that's what he was. And I mean, that little thing that kept speaking
Mhm.
as
Oh
him
yeah, yeah,
was,
yeah.
oh, it's very funny.
Okay, so I think maybe it's a good time to talk about something I didn't like, and I did notice this while I was watching it. But I'm also a little bit like, I can kind of. I felt like Lydia. I was surprised that Lydia became a character that was so, that she allowed herself to kind of get manipulated as much as she did by her boyfriend slash agent, boy,
Yeah.
whatever he was.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was also a villain in the movie.
Right. And like that change to her character, for it feels like a very plot driven change. It isn't necessarily natural to me that she would act that way, especially since I watched Beetlejuice 1 after I watched Beetlejuice 2. I did not get a chance to watch it before I went to go see it.
Yeah.
I saw it right after. So what struck me when I was watching it on rewatch was that Lydia, as a teenager, was so kind of confident and strong, and you couldn't really tell her anything.
I disagree with that take.
Really?
She wrote a suicide note in the first one.
Well, but like she was confidently suicidal.
I am utterly alone. No,
I just felt like she didn't really take anybody's shit in that
Yeah.
movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, she was a dark and morose person, but she wasn't being manipulated. And like, she made a point to kind of, if she didn't like something that, was going on in the house, like she said it, and, she stood up to the parents. And I just felt like she was much more of what's the word? Like an active participant, where it's like in this movie it feels like a lot of things just happen to her. And
Yeah.
then obviously I think that's why I was saying I think it's plot driven, because
Yeah.
at the end there's that turn where she just takes charge again. So I think they needed to do that to get the fuller picture. And
Yeah.
obviously I think too it was to draw a contrast between her and Astrid.
Yeah.
Like Astrid kind of takes over that kind of like
Yeah.
role. And yeah, I think that would be my only real criticism, and it's not even really like anything that I think was bad about it.
Yeah.
I've seen online a lot of people critiquing that there's too many plots, doesn't really go anywhere. I think, and you and I kind of spoke about this a little bit, that there's something a little bit more animated series-esque about this movie.
Absolutely.
And so all the little plots happening at once kind of reminds me of like episodes. Like there's all these little things going on at once. Didn't bug me.
Yeah. this is going to be a hot take, but I love the first one. I love the second one more.
I had a feeling you were going to go there.
I honestly, it's a classic. I love it. I would get a tattoo of the Deetzes if I really felt so inclined. I think
Which
the second,
you just might.
yeah, and actually, animated a series, Lydia is what I'm thinking.
In
But
the red spider web
it
dress.
just is more engaging. I don't find the Maitlands in the first one all that interesting. Alec Baldwin, cute as he was, right? And he just was beautiful. They were boring, and Gina Davis was boring, and there's too much of them and not enough Beetlejuice, which is to my earlier point where I feel like there was more. Maybe we were in the underworld more, right? We see the janitor, for crying out loud, Danny DeVito, a beloved of the Tim Burton universe, right, comes in, and like we see more of that, and so it just seems, one, it feels more like a Halloween movie. Two, it feels more engaging, and three, I love that we're there more than we're here, and even when we're in this world, we go to there, right, with the kid in the closet and like taking her down there, and then we find their dad. So I guess my controversial take is that I enjoyed the second one more than I did the first one.
Could you try again?
Sorry. I enjoyed the second one more.
I think I'm gonna buy it when it comes out because I really liked it.
I hope it has special features. I hope we get a Tim Burton interview or something.
In this day and age, special features are a rarity unless you're getting it from like a boutique label like an Arrow Video or something. But let's hope. And I mean, Warner Brothers doesn't have a
Tim
good
Burton,
track
if you hear me, please do special features.
Warner Brothers doesn't really have a good track record for special features on physical releases lately. But yeah, I really liked part two. I think there's this thing that happens when a movie comes out before it becomes the thing that it becomes in the social consciousness and kind of like in the zeitgeist, where after that movie kind of takes on a life of its own, and whatever audience, I'm a little sick, whatever audience ends up kind of like taking it on as like a beloved thing, it starts to tonally take on new look and feel. And I think that first Beetlejuice movie, if you look at it just kind of like insular, it's not really a children's movie. You know what I mean? Like you can argue that it's a more serious family film. It's really like wacky, but it's also kind of dark in some ways. It presents dark themes in a very kind of like wacky way, which I think is cool. But this movie definitely firmly fits much more in like that kind of more modern Halloween kind of movie that you can take, variety of like different ages from your family to go see. Like it leans a little bit more into like, let's say the franchisement of what Beetlejuice is, like, the merchandising and like what makes it very, very easy for that. Whereas like the first one maybe is like, it was just this movie from that guy who did he do Edward Scissorhands? He did Edward Scissorhands after.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I loved Beetlejuice 2. I'm excited to watch it again. And I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to say one last thing, just doubling back on the animated series, because it's on Tubi. You can download it to own on Apple TV. Highly recommend. Watching it now, what I've realized is that the success of Beetlejuice 1, I think, was enhanced by the cartoon. I think the cartoon leaned into the wacky, leaned into the friendship between Lydia and Beetlejuice much more than it does they're antagonists, right? They're not they're not friends in the movie. And I think
he becomes like her buddy in the animated series.
Exactly. And I think what added to the love of the movie was the cartoon.
Yeah, and I mean the cartoon also kind of handholds, a children demographic
Yeah.
into the first film. Like
Yeah.
even if you were a kid and you liked the first movie, the
Yeah.
cartoon came out at the right time at the right age where it just makes you more endeared to the characters and thus the original movie.
Right. And it coming out in 89, I think, or 90, right? Or whenever it was, early 90s, right? It was a different world of
Yeah, yeah.
cartoons, right? Like cartoons were very adult in some ways, right? So I think that also kind of bridged the gap between the movie, the cartoon, and then eventually the movie 29 years later, however long it was.
And I can't let your to be mention go unnoticed
Yep.
one more time because we are big fans of Tubi.
We
I
are.
think I'm the one that got you onto it.
Possibly, yes.
I think I'm the one that got you onto the Tubi. I'm a big Tubi. If you're watching, sponsor us. You know what I mean? Like,
We're big fans.
trust me, I can.
It's the new blockbuster. Mm-hmm.
And very quickly, Beetlejuice, the animated series, is also available on physical media. You can purchase the complete series on DVD because I'm a big physical media person, and as you are. Segueing out of Beetlejuice and sticking to Tubi for a second, Tubi just added Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which you've never seen. I know that.
I mean, I watched when it was on the WB haphazardly, but I'm not a big Buffy fan the way that you and others who I love are a fan.
For those listening, I'm a huge Buffy stan. I have multiple Buffy the Vampire Slayer tattoos on my body. I sometimes say that Buffy is my religion, and and I'm not joking when I say that.
There's a course, right?
There's a college course on Buffy, and there's like a ton of like Buffy theory books. Like I have a few of them. Okay. And I think we wanted to talk a little bit about another movie, and this was a homework assignment that you had given me, and I graciously agreed to it. And it's connected to the topic of today's episode, which is legacy sequels.
Yes.
It regards the movie Hocus Pocus 2, which, okay, yeah, sure. So when the movie came out during the pandemic, right? That was a pandemic movie.
Tail end 2022.
Really? It was 2022. They announced it during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's such a blur. Those years are such a blur. I watched it along with everyone else. It did huge numbers on Disney Plus, and I was not a fan. I viscerally disliked it. Very disappointed in it. And that is not your take on it. You're
absolutely not. Nope.
You're a big fan of it.
I was a big fan. I've been waiting 29 years for it. I was very excited that the three lead actresses wanted to revisit it. Bette Midler has said, on record that it's her favorite character to play. It's my favorite character to watch. I will watch her in anything. As a side note, a few years ago, so Bette Midler does this charity thing in New York. She like greenifies New York and stuff like that. And every Halloween, she does a big Halloween party for it as a fundraiser. And during the pandemic, they couldn't do it. So they did a virtual one, which I paid a ticket because it was supposed to be all Hocus Pocus themed. And so before the movie happened, they all came back in this like fundraiser thing, and they got Sarah Jessica Parker.
Oh, I saw that. I did see that.
I mean, the costuming wasn't super great. I would say certainly not like Disney caliber, but they brought Elvira in. They had like a bunch of guest stars. And so that just kind of whet my appetite a little bit. And then when they said that the sequel was coming out, I mean, I was just double fisting that. I loved it. I think, to my earlier point, right? Like legacy films that incorporate new actors into it with the original cast is kind of my sweet spot. And I know a lot of people were like, why didn't they bring the original kids? Well, they're not kids anymore, right? And this is a kids movie, so bringing the three new girls in, I thought was great. I love that they were their own little coven. It there are some cringy moments. I myself cringed when that first song kind of hits, and then like I'm with you.
What about Walgreens? What about the Walgreens moment?
Not the best, but they probably got a nice big fat check, so can't fault them for that.
You're
Really
their
for
agent.
me,
You're basically their agent.
yeah, really for me, it was that first song that just kind of hits you out of nowhere. Maybe that was the point. And the mayor, and I love the actor who is the mayor, but like that initial like laugh where he can't, like, he's just laughing for 2 minutes and the girls are like, not great. But I love the guy who owns the cottage now. I love that he redesigned it, the black flame candle. I loved the girls. I think all three of the actresses understood the assignment and wrote it to greatness.
I love how much you love it. I love how much you love it. Because lately I'm definitely in the headspace where I just want to let people enjoy what they want to enjoy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have to demolish it. But
Yep.
I did write notes.
Okay.
I did take your advice and I went into it with an open mind.
Okay.
And I wrote some notes. Okay. My notes. Do we want dislikes first?
Hit me with what you got. Yeah.
Dislikes. The tone is too childish and silly. I can appreciate the camp because I love camp. I can appreciate the camp, but I feel like in this film specifically, it's overused, not balanced, almost to the point of being farcical and heavily cringe.
Okay.
I find the new characters boring. I'm gonna take back this one. I put the descendant plot, like of the guy in the town, like the mayor of the town or something. Yeah. At the beginning, I had a problem with it. By the end, I kind of liked it better. So then there's like the things like Walgreens, Siri HomePod.
I don't understand. You turned mine on.
I just activated mine too.
Good job.
Sorry. I mean, this is the world we live in.
Tim Cook, got us a check, honey.
The Roombas.
I love the Roombas. Oh my God, her babies. And the fact that they followed her to free them from the assault, that was great. That was great.
And then so something that a lot of these types of movies do, and they get a lot of flack for it, is when a movie does I think people online call them member berries. Do you know what a member berry is? So a member berry is like a remember berry, like, oh, remember that thing, like where they like where they like are constantly like asking the audience to remember that thing from the first movie, or remember that joke, or remember that. It's basically just a stupid internet way of saying references, like constant references to the previous film. And in this movie, you would consider that something like her going back into the Sarah going back into the cottage and looking for the rat tails again.
Yep.
It's kind of like remember that. It's like, we already know the audience knows about it if they watch the original. We already know the character's done it, so we can do it again. I cringed. I understand you're much kinder to things like this. And I did not like Gilbert the Great. He
was so sweet and funny.
No. Hocus Pocus, the movie, was playing on the TV in one of the scenes.
Yeah. With Penny Marshall and
Don't like that.
Okay. And the gay guys, like that was a very controversial scene for the internet.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're big fans of that scene.
Yeah.
I thought the movie's production value was not the best. We've discussed that. I thought it looked a little. I'll also say this. I feel like I was telling you a couple days ago that I thought it reminded me too much of a Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah.
Upon watching it, I would say that that's not the case. It
Okay.
is slightly better quality than a Disney Channel original movie, but it still has that very TV. Other podcasts that I listen to refer to it as televisual. It has a very televisual look and
Yep.
feel.
Yep.
Overly just kind of like fakey. Like
Yeah.
I was, you know, and I wrote it here. I put that damn Moonlight Woods set.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like they're always there. I did not like the Young Witches prequel scene.
Literally, it's the first thing on my list.
I have something nice to say about it, though. I do have something nice to say about it.
Okay.
I thought they were really well cast.
Yeah.
I thought the girls did a good job. I just didn't like what they wrote for them to do because I just find the whole thing unnecessary.
Okay.
They remove the edginess of the witches. We've discussed this, that they're not as, you know, kind of subversive and straddling these lines of dialogue and whatnot. Like they made them more Disney Channel and a little bit less
fair
PG.
Yeah.
Like this movie's a G-rated movie, like where the original's probably PG.
Maybe.
At this point I'm nitpicking, so it's like I put the Magica Maxima plot line of that spell. I don't like when they introduce new things that weren't relevant
in a new movie.
No, new things that weren't relevant in the first movie. It's like if Winifred knew about Magica Maxima already, why was Magica Maxima not something she wanted to do in the first one?
Well, then you are contradicting yourself, because if you felt like the prequel section with the little girls was not necessary, it was necessary because their mother then told them don't do this spell. So that's why that's there, right? It's that when they meet their mother, their witch mother, she's like, here's this book, never use that spell. You're going to lose what you love most.
Right. And I understand that explanation, but I feel like that is an explanation that was engineered to make sense of the fact that they're introducing this new plot point. If the witches were coming back to life in the first film and they just wanted to be all powerful, they could have just done the Magica Maxima spell back then.
Well, but they were told not to, and then they were defeated, and then they came back and they're like, we're not taking no shit from teenagers, we're doing the spell. So
we're done with the potion. We need something.
We're not doing the piddling potions.
No more potions.
Yeah.
That's fine. I feel like I kind of got what I wanted out of it. And then this is what I put. Even though I also do not agree with this choice, I can appreciate the final scene of Winifred losing her sisters and showing remorse, but making the characters sympathetic, in my opinion, was a mistake. And so I have chosen to see Hocus Pocus 2. I'm going to refer to it as a non-canon film.
Okay.
It is part of the Hocus Pocus multiverse.
Okay.
And if they did decide to make a part 3 and they bring back some of the legacy cast members, you know, I wouldn't necessarily mind if they pulled a Halloween 2018 and
forgot about this one.
It could be very much like a Cinderella 2, Cinderella 3 direct-to-video situation.
Okay.
You know, we'll eventually dive into the Disney direct-to-video sequels, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All in all, though, I am going to say I liked the exercise of rewatching it. I like the exercise of rewatching it, trying to have a more open mind and see if like maybe it was me just being hateful the first time. Whereas like this time I wasn't trying to see if it gave me something. And I also really liked what you told me to remember that this movie was made for a different audience. And you know, I also have this new feeling now where I understand when something's not made for me. Like I have my Hocus Pocus. I have my version of that movie. I don't need for part 2 to be for me. It's okay if it's for a different generation.
Yep.
But that being said, I don't think I'll rewatch it again.
My turn. So I loved it. I thought that it was a great revisiting of a world that I missed. I think apples to apples, I don't compare them. They're different, right? They're different experiences. I don't know how old I was in 1993, but I was very young, right? Like I loved it then in a way that I am not gonna love this one now, right? And it's the
Sure.
same conversation with like Star Wars prequels. What I loved about the 77 films is not necessarily what I loved about the prequels, because I was at a different point in my life when I first was introduced to them.
Right.
So being my age now and waiting for so long, it just felt like a great time to revisit them. I thought that I loved a lot of it, right? I'm not discontinuing the cringiness of it. There was a lot of cringy things in it, but like I love that they redeemed Sarah a little bit, where she's like, I'm not a dumb sister, right? I'm a good sister. And I love you. And like, you're not going to talk to me like that, because she was kind of a doormat in the first one. I loved that young Winifred, right? Like that actress, and I actually wrote it down. Her name is Taylor Henderson. Like, girl, you can play Bette Midler any day of the week, because it was perfect. Her tone, the way she said things, the way she talked to the mayor, I just thought was so great. And it also kind of humanized her. I agree. I think at the end they did humanize them, because something has to defeat them, right? It can't just be the candle. It has to be something that comes from them. So I even loved that.
And I think for the context of what they did with the movie, all of that works. You know what I mean? Like the story decisions they made to take them in a direction where those types of things can happen, I think it works.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, and Disney has this thing that people have been dinging them on for a good part of a decade now, where they take villains and they humanize them, and they, you know, once upon a time they were allowed to just be villains and allowed to be the antagonist. Whereas like now you have a lot of these remakes or a lot of these live action movies that turn them into these, you know, essentially like
characters.
Three-dimensional character. They turn them into an anti-hero, and then they turn them into a protagonist. And and I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think that's exactly what happened here. And to a point that you had mentioned earlier about how you don't need for this movie to make you kind of like feel the same way the old one did, I actually will say this. I think I'm a bit of a technical snob when it comes to like how movies are made, and I go into them hoping for them to generate that same kind of vibe of the first one. And you know, back to like that whole discussion about Beetlejuice 2, where I was mentioning that it was very tactile. The world feels like a world that is true to ours, that you can live in. I get a feel for the town. I get a feel for where these characters live. You know, we all wanted to live in Max Dennison's bedroom. You know what I mean? We all wanted that house. We all wanted to live in his bedroom.
We all wanted that cottage. I didn't care about their house. I wanted to live in the cottage.
Oh no, I mean, I always wanted the stairwell up to the lighthouse type thing. I mean, you know me, lighthouses. But and like the second one just doesn't feel like that. It doesn't
it doesn't. Agreed.
It doesn't have that lived in, like it has a, and I don't think this is nostalgia talking. I think if I were to create like actual markers about what can make a movie feel timeless, I think there are certain markers. And I think that first one, without knowing it, had those markers. And now I understand that it's not the responsibility of the second film to even try to become timeless, like the first movie. Like, but at the same time, I think simple things like just the way it's shot, the on-location sets, the go a long way. And I was hoping for that, and I just didn't really get it. It just felt very Disney Channel in its production.
Agreed. It doesn't feel like a bookend film, right? It's not one and then the other. And if you watch them back to back, you can tell that they don't feel like the same kind of movie. But I guess what I take away from it is that I don't expect that. I don't expect that to be what comes next, right? It's been 30 years, right? Technology has evolved. It just is not, I mean, you can feel however you feel about it, right? And, you know, to our earlier point, Beetlejuice 2 proves that you can have that tonally same feeling, but It's not an expectation for me. I'm just happy that it happened. I'm just happy that,
Yeah.
I was invited to the party. So I enjoyed it, and I have a picture on my Instagram of me. I don't know how I took the picture, but it's me watching it for the first time, and that banner comes up, and literally I was glued to the television. I was just as excited for this to happen as I was the 40,000 other times that I've watched the first one. So, we talk about how you feel then and you feel now. I was excited for both. I've loved both.
Yeah. I still love the first one. It's, it's iconic,
Yeah.
and
I've got some fun facts for you on the first one.
I love that you're like the fun factor of like the group. I love this.
Because I didn't know this myself, so I'm bringing it to the masses.
Hit me.
Did you know that Leonardo DiCaprio auditioned to be Max?
No.
And the reason that he was not cast was because he was too busy being in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, which he got an Academy Award nomination for. So no harm, no foul there, Leo. I get it. Another fun fact I found out was that my girl, I do have it. Oh, maybe I don't have it.
Wait, who's your girl?
Hold on.
Oh.
So, my girl, Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh.
What
was she gonna be?
She was gonna be Mary.
That probably would have been really good.
She was gonna be Mary, but she didn't want to be mean. She didn't want to be a mean witch, according to my sources. So she turned the role down, and it went to Kathy and Jimmy, who I think is brilliant as Mary Sanderson. But can you imagine what a different movie that would have been with Leo and Rosie in the cast?
Completely different. And I mean, I've always been a big Omri Katz fan. I love me some Omri Katz.
I like knocked myself out with Rosie O'Donnell's frame, but go ahead.
I'm a big Omri Katz stan here. Erie, Indiana is probably one of my you know how like people have things that are markers for who you are. I think Erie, Indiana definitely sits there for me as one of those things. I think the movie was cast exactly like it was meant to be. We all watched it on VHS.
Yeah.
It became this huge cult classic.
A flop when it first came out because Disney, in their sage wisdom, decided to release it in July. But
I tell people all the time that I'm like, growing up in the 90s and in the early 2000s.
That was wild.
Growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, like Disney's kind of like over the last 2 decades in a way, it's like cooler, I guess. Like you're not a nerd for liking Disney anymore. Like to a certain degree, I think the tide's turning again. But when we were in high school, nobody talked about Hocus Pocus. Like everyone had seen it. You know what I mean? And like maybe like your group of friends, if you had like really nerdy friends, like you guys would obsess over, your little Halloween movies and stuff like that.
Do the dance, do the walk. Yeah, me.
But like it wasn't like this thing where everyone like is just where that the whole world knows about it and reveres it. Whereas like now that is what's happened. And
I think Freeform, right, or whatever that channel was, went a long way for that, right? Like they played it on 31 days of Halloween. They played it every day on Halloween. They play it 24 hours a day. It just ends and you start again. So
Disney Channel started airing it first, and
right.
It was justice for ABC Family. I'm not a Freeform girly. But yeah, it's just become this huge thing. And I love it. Will it, I'm sure it'll get brought up again.
Hocus Pocus 3 is in development, according to the internet.
That is right. I did send you that yesterday. But I also did want to say thank you for giving me this task to rewatch it, because I feel like now if I ever have to communicate about it to someone else, I'll be like, you know what? It's not for me. Whereas like before, I maybe would have said that way more with more of a umbrage.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for watching something that you knee-jerk reaction didn't like on first seeing it and don't revisit it. And then watching it a little bit more critically, because you're going to talk about it, and we've got plenty of examples of what that's going to look like in later podcasts. But you watch a little bit more critically, and not bad critically. You just watch a little bit to kind of maybe find something that you like,
and find like that sweet spot between like the fan and someone looking at it objectively.
Yeah.
And I like to pride myself on someone who can be very objective. So I like to check my own kind of like preconceived notions at the door sometimes,
Yeah.
and not just automatically just, have like nostalgia ragey hate on something.
Well, that begs the question, since I gave you homework, what are you going to have me watch?
Well, I didn't come prepared with that,
Okay.
but I didn't come prepared with that.
Okay.
So we will not be assigning you that assignment today.
Okay.
But I think we decided that that's something we're going to explore in future episodes, where I think the idea is going to be like, you'll give me something that maybe I've never seen. I'll give you something you've never seen. We'll each rewatch that thing so that we can talk about it with more like recency. Yep. And there will be occasional times where we'll have something very well known that both of us already are big fans of or whatnot, and we'll talk about that. So I think that's where we're going to go in that direction. And I know we're going to start wrapping this up. So we had decided that maybe one way to wrap it up is to kind of talk about what we've been watching recently. Or reading, because I know you're like an insane reader. So
I know. I'm reading about Jane Goodall now. I mean, it's exciting to me, but I'm not sure that the millions of fans that we have are all that excited. I will say I am watching season 2 of Daredevil because I'm on this mythic journey through the MCU in chronological order, and I'm at the point now where I'm at season 2 of Daredevil. And I have a lot of thoughts. I loved the first season. It's not my kind of show.
So good. Yeah, it's so good.
It's very violent. So I kind of have to watch it in bursts. The second season with the Punisher and Elektra feels a little scattered to me, where like they should have just kind of leaned into one or leaned into the other, but the both and the trial and it just feels a lot-ish. So that's kind of what I'm watching this week. I think I'm on like episode 8 or 9, so I'm hoping to be done with this season for a while. But that show, I think when it first came out on Netflix, was just such a breath of fresh air and something so new and something so adult and something that, Daredevil's a big character, but it's not Captain America, right? It's not Iron Man. So it just felt like something that only real Marvel fans were going to watch and enjoy, and it was made for them. So I do appreciate from that vantage point. Tonally, I don't know how it's in the canon because it is gruesome. But
you're kind of getting a head start on a rewatch because the new one's going to come
Born
out
Again.
Soon. Born Again's going to come out soon, and I'm curious what's going to go on with that. I have my own opinions on the MCU-ification of the MCU as it keeps going, where it even undoes things that it previously did. I love the Daredevil series. I actually did not do a rewatch of that recently, but I think I did start up maybe like Punisher. I never finished Punisher. I think I watched like 1 or 2 episodes, but I have been in the mood to want to revisit Daredevil, Jessica Jones, like that whole segment of series. I have been wanting to revisit them.
Well, Daredevil season 1, perfection. Jessica Jones season 1 with the Purple Man, I think was great television. And the girl who plays her was just perfection.
Kristen Ritter.
After this is Luke Cage season 1, and then I think Defenders or maybe Iron Fist. I don't know. There's a whole thing, but
Defenders and Iron Fist are big no's for me. But I may revisit those. And then what I'm watching right now is, I'm watching a lot of 911, which is a completely ridiculous, schlocky, Ryan Murphy procedural firefighter police.
Is it his?
Yeah, it's a Ryan Murphy show.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, who
Okay.
do American Horror Story and all those other Ryan
Yep.
Murphy productions.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I like it so much, because it infuses that kind of more I don't know, that Ryan Murphy stuff is like a little campy and sexy and
Yeah.
like kind of
Controversial and
yeah,
problematic sometimes.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if this show has anything problematic.
Okay.
I don't think it does.
Well, his monsters thing on Netflix is raising a bunch of eyebrows.
I haven't. I've seen a few things on Twitter about it, but I
Yep.
haven't actually clicked on anything. I just see people mentioning a few stuff. So I've been watching a lot of 911. I burned through that since July. I did 7 seasons from mid-July all the way till maybe about a week and a half ago, and then I picked up 911 Lone Star, which is the spinoff with Rob Lowe. And believe it or not, it's actually very different than 911. Like uh the show focuses almost exclusively on Rob Lowe, and all the other characters are ancillary, and y- whereas like 911 is like 100% an ensemble show.
Yep.
You get a little bit more sometimes of Angela Bassett, but sometimes you'll get almost no Angela Bassett, so it isn't the same. Whereas like every storyline in 911 Lone Star has to do with Rob Lowe's character. Not every storyline, uh all the characters have their own individual storylines in 911.
Got it.
Whereas like that's not really the case in Lone Star. And I didn't know this, but Lone Star films in LA,
Yeah.
even
Okay.
though it takes place in Austin, Texas, but it films in LA. And I immediately noticed that they put like color grading on the series that is more kind of like desaturated.
Sepia.
Yeah, like more sepia tone, desaturated, a little bit more kind of like grayer desaturated, make it
Mhm.
more desert, I
Yeah.
guess. And then I watched the premiere of 911 season 8 the other night, and immediately everything is like highly saturated oranges and reds, and LA and 911 is just like this yellow gloss over it, and I love those shows. They're so
And it doesn't
ridiculous.
bother you the coloring of it?
No, I'm saying it in a good way. I'm saying
Oh,
it in a
okay.
good way
Okay.
because like I think that's it's a clever way to set a different place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
Lone Star is supposed to be in Austin, so it's clever that they do that small change to kind of differentiate the look.
Well, I'm sure Rob Lowe was not super keen on moving to Austin for 6 months out of his year. So
No, and the show's not as engaging, so it's like it's more of like I picked it up waiting for 911.
yeah.
I'm sure I'll keep watching it, but like a much slower pace. And I've also been rewatching not rewatching, I've been watching for the first time Supernatural.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Um Never saw it when it first came out. The show had 15 seasons. It was on the air for a really long time.
It was the marquee show for CW for many years.
Yep. And I finally got around to a place where I will say, growing up, I don't think I obviously because I was in the closet, I don't think I gravitated to things from a purely physical standpoint where I instinctively was like, oh, this show has 2 really hot guys fighting demons. Like I was still too busy paying attention to loving Sarah Michelle Gellar fighting demons.
Fair enough.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it just my
Yep.
brain wiring just was not built that way.
Yeah.
And now I was like, you know what? Why not watch 2 really hot guys fighting demons?
Yeah.
And I also find Jensen Ackles very hot
Yeah.
nowadays. So
Well,
it's
I'm old
been
enough where I remember him as Brady from Days of Our Lives. So before
oh
15
no.
years of Supernatural, he was the hunka hunka burning love on Days of Our Lives. So that's how far he and I go back.
Yeah.
And then the kid from Gilmore Girls is the other one, right?
I also now think he's hot too. I
Yeah.
don't again, I've never looked at him that way. It's just maybe Jared Padalecki. I started maybe seeing him that way like in the last 5-10 years. Now I look at them and I'm like, yeah, these 2 guys are hot.
Mm-hmm. Are they brothers in the show?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the show's like super, super serious. Like somebody was telling me the other day that they wish it had more comedy.
Okay.
And I was like, sure, but there's no rule that says that a show for it to be good needs to kind of blend Yeah, like she's a big this I'm talking about my best friend Ashley.
Yeah.
She loves Buffy like I do, and
Yeah.
Buffy straddles a lot of tones. Um, so I think she instinctively is like, oh, I want my horror, but I also want my action, but I also want my comedy. And
Yeah.
Buffy flows in and out of that.
Yeah.
Supernatural does not. Supernatural just kind of is always super serious. Um, and in hindsight, I'm shocked that it was on the CW, given the tone that it has for so long, and it did so well.
Well, I think for a lot of, I mean, just, from a person who's not watched it, right? Two cute young guys, it was their market, right? So
Oh,
for
true.
a long time, if that's all you're seeing, then that's kind of why they kind of, and I heard the shows, I mean, you don't stay on the air for 15 years unless you have a good show. So I think,
It's not bad. It's not
yeah,
bad. Like it's good. It's good like background sometimes. Like I'm not watching it so serious where I'm like I need to know every detail. I
yeah,
feel like because it's also a little bit monster of the week or demon of the week,
yeah,
you can kind of like tune out a bit and
yeah,
pick back up and
yeah.
understand. It's getting into like weird territory where there's like prophecies and all
Yeah.
these other things, but
Well,
yeah, that's what I'm watching.
before I let you go, and I know we're gonna do a deeper dive on this, but speaking of monsters every week, I've also been watching and rewatching ad nauseum Agatha All Along. I've watched the first 3 episodes probably on a loop countless times, and I'll save the main bulk of the discussion for when it ends. But what I love of what they're doing is that it feels very episodic, where like
Mhm.
one episode is going to be one challenge, and I think that's how they're going to do the Witches Road. And 10
And
out of 10 so far.
I'm watching it too. You know, I like it. I think we're gonna wait for the series to be
For,
over
for sure.
because it ends right on Halloween weekend.
Yeah.
So I think right around that first week of November, we'll record and we'll do a
Yeah.
full Agatha All Along episode.
But just the
Um,
structure, I think, is beautiful.
and what's good about that too, the structure, so many streaming shows, the episodes feel so inconsequential. Like if you tell someone like, "Oh, I'm watching episode 3," they'll be like, "What happens in that one again? Like what is that episode?"
Yeah.
When you have a very structured episodic kind of engine, like in film school they tell you it's like shows need to have like an engine, like a story engine.
Yeah.
And if the engine of Agatha All Along is as they're walking down the road, they stop at these different witches' houses.
Yeah.
That's an easy way for you to be like, "Oh, episode 4 was the one where they went into this
Right.
house."
Right.
Which makes it good because I feel like that's how TV used to be, where you can like very accurately say like, "Oh yeah, this is what
Yeah.
happens in this episode."
Yeah.
Whereas like Stranger Things, I love Stranger Things, but I I can tell you the episode where the girl floated in the air,
Right.
but I can't tell you
Random chronologically,
what episode number that was.
Yeah.
Like I have no clue.
Well, I think distribution plays a lot into that, right? The fact that it's kind of like The Mandalorian and
The binge,
X-Men 97, right?
travel.
Every week you have, it's like appointment TV where, back then, 9 o'clock on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever it comes out, you know where you're going to be. And I think that makes it a little bit more present. You are more present in the participation of watching it. So,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of
yeah,
episodic and appointment TV. I don't like binging. I'm on record as not being a fan of it. It makes
it's
you just get,
overwhelming. Yeah.
and you just get over it so fast. Like I don't like I love the fact that we've been watching Agatha all along and like texting each other. And I like the fact that, when something is just released all at once, somebody has more time than another,
Yeah.
or one person has no time, so they can't watch it. And then now the conversation is just over. So I like us being in sync with when we catch up on these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just being on the internet, right? Everybody's on the same page versus like people spoiling it for you and stuff like that. So, and it prolongs the enjoyment.
Well, I think we did it. I think we recorded this first episode.
I think we did it.
I think we did. We're going to do it again next week or this week. No, we're doing it again this week.
Yep.
And yeah, so anybody who listened to this, thank you guys so much. Like and
Back.
subscribe. Like and subscribe. I know I got to throw that out there. That's part of the gig. We're hoping to get better at this. It's our first time. I'm pretty psyched about this first episode. I hope everything just keeps getting better, and catch you at the next Midnight Snack.
Bye.